Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we believe mental illness can be temporary and transformative. Stay tuned for innovative, effective tools from experts in the field of mental health. Hosted by Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist. This podcast aims to change the narrative around mental illness. Move from a place of fear to a place of hope and solutions. Here on Your Mind.
Amber Hollingsworth is a master addiction counselor, founder of Hope for Families Recovery Center, and creator of the YouTube channel Put the Shovel Down. With over 2 decades of experience, she's helped thousands of families navigate addiction recovery using innovative, relationship-focused strategies like the invisible intervention. Known for her relatable, no-nonsense approach, Amber empowers families to outsmart addiction, set healthy boundaries, and rebuild trust. Her expertise and compassionate style make her a sought-after podcast guest, offering practical advice and hope to families facing the challenges of addiction. Amber, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me.
I'm hoping you can tell us a little bit about how you got into Put the Shovel Down and the work you're doing and what drives your passion for it.
Well, I worked as a counselor in an acute care facility for about 10 years, right out of college. I did everything, and it was a hospital. I did everything in the hospital. I was patient advocate. I ran adolescent chemical dependency, IOP. I did inpatient mental health, all the things. And as I worked in that system for so long, you start to see the holes in it, And wasn't that it wasn't a good place. It really was actually a good facility. It's just that you start to see problems with the system. And eventually, that prompted me to kind of try to see if I could try to do it a slightly different way. And I went out into private practice. And from there, how I ended up with Put the Shovel Down is kind of interesting because I didn't start it to be a YouTuber. I started it because I found myself saying the same things to patients over and over. And then they would say, man, I wish I had that on recording. And then I would say, oh, I could probably just record that. I thought that one day. And I threw it on YouTube just so I could share it with my clients to give them the link. That's how it all got started. Now it's turned into its own whole giant thing.
And so what's the hope you have for that giant thing?
Well, my hope is to help provide resources, particularly for people who have addicted loved ones, because they're so desperate. They're looking for help, but they're not getting it. And everywhere they turn, they're sort of just sent a message that's something like, well, there's really nothing you can do. You're just going to have to cross your fingers and back up and hope they decide they want it for themselves. And when that's your spouse or your child or, someone you love and care about, that's kind of unacceptable. People want to know more. They want to be more empowered than that. They want other options.
All right. What kind of other options do you give them? Come on.
All right.
Don't keep us waiting.
Well, I do a lot of teaching on the channel about how to get through to someone who's in denial or someone who doesn't want to get help, because so many people think that there's nothing you can do. But after 20 years of working with people who have addictions, almost all of which were in denial when they came to see me and didn't even want to be sitting in my office to begin with, I've developed some skills over those years of how to engage people who are initially reluctant or resistant for whatever reason. And so I teach families those kinds of skills. And I'm happy to jump in there and teach on this channel as much or as little as you want about that.
Well, let's jump in. What kinds of, you talk in some of your talks and writings about, an invisible intervention, and it's piqued my interest. What can you share with us that might help people? Because, of course, as a therapist, I have a number of people in my caseload at any given time who either themselves or have a family member who's struggling with an addictive process, and they may or may not have acknowledged that it's a problem for them yet.
Exactly. Well, most people have heard of regular intervention like you see on the TV show where everybody gets in a circle and you confront the person, you read the letters, and you hope to get them to agree to go to treatment. And that can be very successful. I've seen that work, particularly in a case where the addiction has gone pretty far. Like when you watch the show Intervention, those are always very serious, sort of, I would call it end stage addiction cases. It works okay in that circumstance. It doesn't work so well when you're dealing with someone who's still somewhat functional, like they're still working or they're still going to school or, there's areas of their life that are still working well.
And their friends still let them hang out with them, etc.
Exactly, that's exactly it. Sometimes you can confront those people in that kind of intervention and sort of get them to agree to go to treatment, but it's probably not gonna stick because if a person hasn't come to terms with the fact that not only that they have a problem, but that they have a problem that's big enough that they need to stop it completely, then they're not done what I call bargaining, where it's sort of that trial and error change process, and they're gonna come out and they're gonna keep going. So and you can only play that card so many times, it's kind of an ace card, and you don't wanna play it too soon, having that kinda confrontational thing. Plus, there's just a lot of other reasons why that backfires for people so many times. So, I teach people to do it in a way that they never even know that there was an intervention because it's not a get everybody on the same page to confront you kinda thing. It's a quiet, behind the scenes, how do I influence someone to decide that they actually wanna make changes for themselves? Because that when a person that's gone through that process decides to get help or change, it tends to stick because the person has come to terms with the fact that there's something in their life that they wanna change. And it may not be that they fix it on the first try, but they've decided that they're going to fix it, and so they do eventually figure that out, and it sticks better because they've come to terms with it. And so yeah.
Because there is a deep truth about they have to make the decision, right? Because they can always choose, to use or not use or to get help or not get help, no matter how much we might care about them or want them to get help.
Right.
So, what are some of the things you do to try and help someone reach or at least see the conclusion that you're seeing?
The first it's sort of a process, but the very first step and the most important step, if you don't even do any of the other steps, you just do this one, you've increased your chances of having a successful long-term recovery infinitely. But the most important thing for the family member to do is get out of what I call the villain role, because families inadvertently end up in the villain role, and there can be more than one villain, but there's at least one primary villain, and it's usually the person closest to them. It's like their parent or their spouse. It's the person that lives with them and sort of sees them the most. What happens is you see someone you love start to make bad decisions and go down a wrong path, and you're worried because you feel like they're gonna destroy their life and yours possibly. And so you do what comes natural and you try to talk sense into them. And then that doesn't work. And then they get angry with you and start shutting you out, and they start sneaking even more because they feel like you're on their case. And then you get in this power struggle where you're trying to force them to see the issue by proving it. You start going around collecting evidence, you start presenting them with things, then they start like gaslighting you, and you get this giant power struggle that ensues between the family member and the person with the addiction. And that power struggle actually blocks the person from seeing the problem because they get fixated on it. And they get consumed with this story in their head about how you're never happy with them, you're always critical, it's not fair, nothing they ever do is good enough for you, you only focus on their one flaw. Like, they have this whole narrative going on, and as long as they've got that to fixate on, it blocks their view. It's like it provides this handy distraction to focus on what you're doing wrong, which allows them to kinda not have to look at what they're doing and the choices that they're making. And so, the most important thing is to get out of that role. And I know this from 20 years of working with people, when the family's doing that, the person isn't gonna talk to me about anything else other than that, like nothing. We can't get anywhere else as long as that's the roadblock, so
So, how do you help people get out of that role?
well, I teach them how to get themselves in the good guy role, actually, which is kind of the opposite of traditional thinking. I think a lot of people teach a lot about tough love, and I'm not against tough love, but if it's done the wrong way, in a harsh way, or in a way that the person perceives as mean or cruel or unfair, uncaring, you help them continue that narrative of self-pity and resentment, and self-pity and resentment fuels addiction. And so it's about, how do I get myself out of this bad guy role and into, like, a trusted advisor role, like a counselor or someone might do. And so it's about, how do I do that? And there's some steps to that, but one thing you can do is just become a better listener. How to use strategic empathy, how to use just classic reflective listening skills, how to look at the situation from their point of view. Because when you can articulate someone else's situation from their point of view, maybe even better than they can articulate it, you get credibility. And I call it's like building credit with this person. Literally like a credit score. Like if you wanted to buy a house and you might work on your credit score or whatever. So you could, you have the credit, the bank would lend you the money. In this case, it's like you're building a credit score so that when the time comes, this person cares what you think and they trust and respect your opinion on it because they feel like you understand them.
From their point of view.
From their, like, you get them completely. Because it's not even so much that, that it's that they need to know you love them. They already know you love them. And in some ways, that's a big burden to carry in some ways. But a person's not going to listen to you unless they feel like you get them, like you really get them. And if you can get yourself in a position like that with someone, then your suggestions have a lot more weight.
Now, as you started saying this,
Mm-hmm.
my mind went to, if I can do this well enough, then they'll do this and this. And therefore, if they don't do this and this, it must mean I didn't do it well enough. So as I listen to you, I know you're not in that realm. And I know I'll get that pushback from people, right? People who they're trying to be whatever their friend, whatever their son or daughter, whatever their parent needs to be, I'll be whatever they need. And in that process, if they think, if I just do this, this, and this, I'll get this result, it's like a recipe. It doesn't really work so well because there's all parts of the ingredients and the preparation and the baking of that recipe that is in somebody else's hands.
Well, that's because you don't have the full recipe yet. That's just the first two ingredients.
So keep going, right? We had this idea of learning to listen. And I'm imagining that you're saying we need to learn a whole new set of listening skills so that we can have a deeper level of empathy. And when we share that with the person, they feel that we get it.
Yeah.
And then our credibility goes up.
Then your credibility goes up. All right. Right. And so you behind the scenes, that's why it's invisible. You're building this credit score, right? You're out of the villain role. You're into the trusted role eventually. And while you're doing that, you're allowing the natural consequences to occur. So you're not fixing things for them, but you are also not being the villain. What most families do when they're in the situation is they do it completely backwards, right? Like they fix all the problems that the addiction's causing. They pay for the lawyers, they call up the teachers and ask for extra credit, they do all the things. But inside the context of the relationship, they're critical and nagging and on that person's case. And so that presents a picture for that person that's all messed up, right? Because the picture that person sees is, I don't know what your problem is. I'm fine. I'm still going to work. I'm still making money. There's nothing wrong with me. My problem is you. That is how they see the issue. Is that the problem is the family member. And so instead of going about it that way, I want people to reverse it. I want you to let the natural consequences happen and then empathize with them when they do. Because empathy triggers the learning part of someone's brain. And a whole lot better than trying to tell them the answer, a whole lot better than trying to confront them or force them to see it. If they get a negative consequence and then you say something like, I told you that was going to happen, blah, blah, then they're going to, even if they know they're in the wrong, they're immediately going to be defensive because that's just human instinct and we're all like that. And addicts even more so. But if you're like, oh my gosh, that's so terrible. I know you didn't mean for that to happen, which they probably didn't mean for whatever happened. Then they immediately think, they may or may not say this out loud, but they will think, yeah, but I shouldn't have, or I knew better. They'll have that thought in their head. It depends on their personality whether they'll acknowledge it, but it's almost reflexive. just like it's reflexive that they'll be defensive if you come at it directly. If you come at it with empathy, they'll start to see their peace, and the chance that they'll see their peace in it is so much higher, right? And so it's not a matter of, "Oh, if I'm nice, they'll stop drinking or using." That's not what happens. It's, "Oh, if I'm nice, they'll stop seeing me as the problem. And if I let the world be the bad guy and not me be the bad guy, then they'll start to sort of get that discomfort," right? Because it does have to get, the cons have to outweigh the pros in someone's mind to make them wanna change. And to make them wanna change completely, to stop completely, the cons have to really outweigh the pros there. And so you're letting them see that, but while you're building this sort of trusted credibility, eventually they're gonna get themselves in a mess. Eventually they're gonna have that moment of clarity. They're probably gonna have a lot of little ones, but eventually they're gonna have the big one where they're just like, "I'm done with this. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of being mad at myself. I'm sick of screwing things up and digging myself out of the hole or feeling crappy," or whatever it is for them. And if you've played your cards right, then they might even acknowledge that to you and say that to you. And then if you have a suggestion and you play that card correctly, they're likely to listen to it, because that's what I do. I build a relationship with people. I try to understand them completely. I try to see their struggles, but also like their strengths and what they're really good at. And then when they get themselves in a mess, I say, "Oh my, you know what? I think you need to get on this SoberLink alcohol monitoring. Or, you know what I think we need to do? We need to do this to get you out of that legal trouble." And then they're like, "Oh my gosh, Amber, thank you so much. You helped me." Because then they feel like, "Oh, thank you. You like came in here and saved the day," versus you're trying to make me do something I don't want to do. There's a lot of like setting the stage and then just letting addiction play naturally. So it's not that they quit because you're nicer. It's that they start to see their problem more
Well, you just said,
clearly because you're
yeah,
not in the way.
you just said, let the addiction play out
Yeah,
naturally, right?
right,
And that's the piece that we disrupt when we get into rescuing or enabling.
right.
The piece that you're adding that a lot of people miss is that if you do it with righteous indignation or anger or bitterness,
Right.
right, you're offended. How could you do that to our family? Or how could you betray my trust or whatever to the person who's addicted in whatever way? Then you trigger their defensive, turtling in response. And
Mhm.
if you do it with compassion, if you do it with, learning skills for better listening and deep compassion for the struggle they're going through, you open the door for them to see it a whole different way.
Exactly. You're picking out exactly what I'm putting down. You got it.
So then what? Now, one of the things I remember reading, listening to some of your talks is the idea of the family dynamics in relation to the addictive process. What do you notice about that the average person's not going to see or notice?
Like,
Family dynamics affecting addiction process.
one of the things that's just so super common is that, like I said before, you have this primary villain person. You have these different roles that develop. You have this primary villain person, and not really a villain. I'm just saying that because that's how the person with the addiction sees them, is you're my problem because you're always worried or you're always critical, whatever it is that they tell themselves. And
They're the blame target.
right, he was the main target. That's a good way to put it. So there becomes this power struggle between the main target and the person with the addiction. Well, the other people in the family become annoyed with that power struggle, and they just want that power struggle to stop because, like, let's say it's a mom and a son that are having this power struggle, which is super common. Then you have the dad over there, which is just sick of hearing this
Can we just have
argument.
some peace and quiet?
Yes, who just wants it to stop and who on some level knows, like, you're making it, thinking about their wife, you're making it worse. And so then they start playing this. They think they're balancing it out, right? And then they start playing this overly good guy role. And now you got a really bad situation because you got good cop, bad cop going on. And then the one that's the good cop will start holding secrets, start fixing things behind your back because they don't like the way you're handling. Sometimes it's because they literally don't see it as a problem as much as you do. And sometimes it's they see the problem, but they don't agree with how you're handling it because they feel like you're making it worse. And to be honest, you probably are. you know. And then the more that the other parent rescues, the more frustrated the parent with the alarms, that's going off in their head they get. And so it's one gets harder and one gets nicer. And then you've got this whole conflict that happens between these two people. Then you can mix in on top of that what goes on with all the other characters in the family, whether there's other people live in the house or relatives, grandparents, in-laws, whatever. And so the primary target person feels very scared, very resentful, and isolated because they feel like they're the only ones seeing the problem and no one is listening to them. So then they start going around trying to gain support from the other family members. Like, let's say this is your husband you're worried about. Your inclination might be to go to your in-laws and say, hey, your son has an alcohol problem and I need your help. Well, that always backfires because what you don't realize is behind the scenes, the addicted person has been going to all these other people complaining about you and talking about how you're always mean to them and you're always critical and you're trying to control them and you're never happy with them. And then when you go in it with this frantic energy trying to convince somebody that this person that they love so much is really a bad guy, they're not going to want to hear that. And in their mind, you've just proven the case that the other person is saying, like, oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. This person is kind of off the rails, and they start working against you even more. And this whole thing just gets bigger and worse and bigger, and it will destroy the whole family.
Yeah, when people aren't seeing how what they're doing to try and fix the problem is actually making it worse, then the system goes to the breaking point
Right.
eventually.
And everybody's making it worse. One's making it worse by being the villain and trying to force it, and the others are making it worse by trying to, you know, soften the blows and fix everything. And so you've got double enabling on both sides, which is all making the problem worse, plus all the disagreement between all the other family members. The wife being mad at the in-laws and in-laws being mad at the wife. That's another whole distraction. And while all that's going on, this addiction is just growing and growing and growing.
I particularly like the idea that you can shift the focus to the family dynamic as something separate.
Yes.
Because if you can't understand that set of forces and how it's like, these massive pinchers coming down on the actual problem, which is the addictive process or the pain in the person, like Gabor Mate would say, instead of asking why so much alcohol, just ask why so much pain, right? Let's get at the pain of the dynamic within the person that is at least aggravating an addictive process that's going on.
Exactly.
And I can't do that if I'm at war. I used to talk to people about the teeter-totter effect. The teeter-totter works on the fulcrum. And when people get together, they meet at that fulcrum, wherever it is, and they talk about, hey, well, I think you're attractive and you think I'm attractive and we both want kids and to live in a nice house, etc. And this is how we want to raise our kids. And we're agreeing on all these sets of issues. And then we get married and have kids. And all of a sudden, one of us is a little bit more strict than the other one thought. Well, you know what happens if you're on a teeter-totter? That means you start tipping in that direction. To balance it out, the other parent decides to be a little more lenient, got to make up for the fact that, mommy's so harsh on you, etc. Pretty soon, if you extend this out after weeks or months or years, we have neither parent acting the way they said they wanted to, relating to their children or doing parenting the way they dreamed they would before they actually had them. One is way too lenient and one is way too strict, or one is way too distracted and the other is way too hovering and focused. How do you fix that? You gotta recognize that you can't be doing the action based on what this other character out here is doing. You have to be doing it based on what's the central need of the person I'm interacting with. I have to say, wait a minute, I can't be more strict to counteract a too lenient parent on the other side. I just want to do what I think is best for me and my child in this moment. Kind of turn a blind eye to what the other person is doing and all the upset I might generate when I think about it. Do you believe what she gave him? 5 cookies before dinner?
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, the person in this whole scenario that's most motivated is that primary target villainized person because they're the ones that are trying to fix something. And everyone else is just trying to escape what this person is trying to do. And so I like to start with that person because that person is the one looking for some solutions, to be honest. They're the most motivated at this point.
The one who's being blamed by
Yes.
the person in the addictive process?
Yeah, the one that's in the power struggle.
Right.
The codependent one, which I don't like that word, but that's what other people would say, or the main enabler or whatever. So if you start with that person, and I say to them, the first thing you gotta do is you gotta get these other people to see the situation that you see. And then they'll say, "I've been trying and they don't listen to me." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I need you to stop doing it that way." And everything I teach about how to get through to an addicted person, I say, I just need you to apply that to your spouse or your in-laws or whoever this other people are. So instead of trying to force them to see it, I want you to be a good listener. I want you to back up. If grandparents think, "Oh, he's just the sweetest thing ever," let them go stay with grandparents for a while and just empathize with them. And they're going to see pretty quick because now you're not blocking their view. And now they don't see you as the bad guy. Because not only does the addict see you as the bad guy, everybody else sees you that way too. And so if you just back up first, and let these other people kind of see the issue, and the more you can use those same skills with those people, they start to see the problem and then they get more on board. So the first thing you do is you go up and you get a team if that's possible, if there are other people, and there usually are. And if you don't do them, they're going to sabotage everything you try to do anyway. You got to do that first. Then I like to, particularly when it's parents, I like to sort of suggest a system. I call it front guy, back guy, because one of the people is inherently good at, I tell them they have a really good sketch star. Like they know when something's up, and that's the one with the alarms going off. And whatever they think is happening is probably happening because they just have this radar, like they can't miss it, right? But they're not good at dealing with it because their radar is going off. So the other one that tends to maybe want to minimize it or not see it, their radar is not as good, but they're usually a lot better at dealing with the person. So instead of working against each other, I say, we're going to be a team. You have two different skills, front guy, back guy. The one that's good at seeing it, the other one has to trust you. If that person says it's happening, it's probably happening. I'm just telling you. You can trust what they're saying. But you're going to be the one to address it because you have better skills and you're not in that villain role as much, so you already have more credibility. I want you to figure out how to interact, and you have to trust each other to do that. One has to trust that the other one's radar is right, and the radar has to trust that this one can.
That what this person does will help some. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we can get on the same team and use those differences in a way that's helpful. Like if you have a pitcher and a catcher on a baseball team instead of adversarially.
Excellent. And so basically using the same good listening skills and empathy for the other team members that you might want to recruit to help with presenting a united front to the addicted person.
Exactly.
But again, it's just something you're doing as a natural course of your interactions with them. It's not some big production where you hire a therapist to have an intervention.
And 100%. Right. It's a way you start changing the system. Like you said, that fulcrum, if you change where you're putting the weight, it's going to shift the system. And you start pulling that system back in a direction that's helpful. And that is such powerful influence. Like you can make things happen so much faster that way.
Excellent. So how do you provide services most? Do you do it, is it in person? Do you have more of an online, a virtual ability to do this? Do you do it with individuals, families, groups? Tell me a little bit about how you do this work.
Well, historically, we saw people in our office like everyone does, but we started getting big online just before COVID hit. So the two things combined, we help people all over the world now. And so we do, we don't really do full long-term counseling anymore, but we do short-term coaching and consultation. So we help a lot of family members who are in this position. What do I do when I'm in this situation? And we help them through that. We have several ways we do that. One way is people just watch our YouTube videos and learn these skills and use them, and it works for them. People that want to go more in depth can either take one of our online courses, like the Invisible Intervention is an online course that you can take on your own time, right? And you can go through it and learn these lessons that teach you all the communication, all the things. And you can do that behind the scenes. Or we have some sort of like group coaching and things like that. Like we run a challenge every month that is specifically for spouses of functional alcoholics, where we sort of walk you through the process together on how to not just use these invisible intervention skills, but how to speed it up by identifying things like how does your person want to be seen? What are their values? And how to pull those values to the surface by just reminding them of, not reminding of them by telling them they're not doing it, but just reminding them of that strength that they have and that purpose that they have and those values that they have. Because when you bring those to the surface, the person starts to see the discrepancy between their values and who they want to be becomes even more clear. So, like, for example, instead of saying something like, "You're destroying our kids' lives," "You're messing it up," you say something more like, "I always admired the way you were always so involved with the kids. A lot of moms and dads aren't like that. They're just too busy, and you've always made time for them." And that brings that part of that person, which is a true part of them, back to the front of their thinking. And they feel good about that, but it also makes them see where the
Where they're
gap
missing the
is,
mark.
where
Yeah.
they're missing the mark.
Right.
And then they see it. And so now you're speeding it up.
Right. And it's the mark that
Exactly.
they set. It's not the mark you're setting for them.
Exactly. And you're just reminding of them and of their mark in a really good aligning way. And you can even say, I know it's so important to you because you went through that with your dad, and I know you never wanted to be like that. And that's one of the reasons I fell in love with you. See how powerful that is? And then when they forget the basketball game or, they get short at homework time, they're gonna feel that deeply. And they're gonna see how it's affecting them instead of seeing you as the villain. It like I said, it clears the path for them to get honest with, and those are the things that are gonna motivate someone to change because it's not who they want to be.
Yeah. And that filter through which they're seeing themselves or blocking themselves from seeing
Yes.
themselves is, what you're going to call in a question. You're going to shine a spotlight on it so they can see, oh, look, I'm hiding from myself the fact that I'm missing the mark on all these things I said I wanted to achieve in my life. And
Right.
then it's happening without the blame as a distortion. And I'm not doing it because he, she, they. I'm just noticing, oh, look what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's not my intention, that's not who I wanna be, that's not me. And they start to see it so much more clearly, so much more clearly. Like, for example, I was working with this fellow a while back who is a very successful person, a highly respected person in their field, but had an alcohol problem and had for years and years. And when this person drank, they were not a nice person. They would make mean, snarky comments. I mean, they were just not nice. This person is in complete denial when they start seeing me, and they just talk to me about their work and how well respected they are and how people think that they're just the greatest thing since sliced bread. They're literally laying it onto me thick, and how they treat this person and that person and how they're the favorite person in the whole place. And I listen to this for a few weeks, and then I say, "Wow, you really put a lot of effort into being kind and considerate and helpful. Like, you so much more than most people, that's who you are." Right? And then we can sort of sneakily bring in, I know that this alcohol thing frustrates you because it makes you the opposite of that. And clearly, this is important to you. You could literally see the light bulbs go. You could see the whole facial expression change where they're suddenly realizing, yeah, but I'm a jerk to my wife, which I didn't
Right.
say you're a jerk to your wife
Right.
because he had told me that alcohol makes him, not the nicest or whatever. So I could say that because he had already told me that. He knew that.
Right. There's some part of him that sees enough of the pattern that can show it to you. And then when you look at the pieces, you go, oh my gosh, look at that pattern. And the person who handed you the puzzle pieces is what? I don't see anything. Right. Right. So you get to shift their view
Mhm,
until they see what they're handing you in a different
mhm.
way. And they go, oh, there it is. It's in
Yeah,
me.
yeah, and then I'm like, "That must be terrible because you put all this effort into this and this and this, and then, like, one little thing you say, and then it just destroys it, and that's so unfortunate." And they're like, "Yeah," I mean, you can watch the light bulb.
Yeah, the essence of what you're talking about there is the core of what they are going for in coherence therapy. And when the person sees inside their own mind how there are these two completely incompatible beliefs,
Mhm.
but they both feel true, right? In this essential feeling inside, then their own system goes, well, now wait a minute, this can't be right, and comes up with an integrated solution that's far more functional.
Exactly. Exactly. And then they start to see the alcohol as the problem. Because they're probably not I mean, on some level, they're gonna be upset with themselves, but it's better if you sort of villainize the addiction, right? Because it's like you have to help someone see that, "Yes, I am a problem here," enough so that they get motivated to change, but also not so much that you destroy their sense of self, because then they just give into it, and that's not good. So, like, you have to let it be uncomfortable enough, but not too and then say, "Oh, this thing out here, this is, like, messing up everything you've ever worked for." Then they can start to see where the real villain is clearly, and then that's how you get people motivated to make changes.
You know about the book Push Off From Here?
I don't. I like the title, though.
This is a book that is written by Laura McGowan. And essentially, there are these 9 statements that she really valued when she was hearing them from people when she was starting her recovery from addictions. And she used it as like the epilogue of one of her first book, which is titled "We Are the Luckiest," and then the second book uses that 9 points from the first book and just expands it into a. Here's what we mean by this. Well, one of the statements is, you know, it's not fair that this is your thing, that you
Mhm.
have to struggle with alcohol, that other people can drink socially and not get a problem. It's not fair, but this is your thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Nonetheless, this is the situation. Yeah.
And you're the only one that can fix your thing kind of thing. And,
Right.
the other 9 points are just loving supportive. They're the hard, cold fact with loving support brought in.
Because
And
people can hear hard, cold facts if they feel loved and supported because their defensive brain isn't working.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. So, it just I'm hearing this wonderful synergy between so many other things that I've read and worked on over the years and what you're presenting. And the idea that if you I really like that you said that you're not doing the long term, you're doing the short term coaching, right? Because that to me, that gets everybody's minds set with the idea that we're going to teach you tools and
Yeah.
you're going to pick them up and use them.
And it
It's
is
not me
very
coming and
directive,
fixing your
right.
family or
Yeah.
rescuing you. It's you learning some tools and then applying them in your life.
Right, that's exactly it, and it really is coaching because when you deal with these families, they want solutions. There's plenty of places for them to go and feel heard and supported, but they're like, "What do I say?" And we say, "I want you to say these words, write them down, and say them exactly in this moment, and say them for exactly this amount of time, and let's practice the tone of voice you're gonna say them in." But that's why it really is sort of coaching. Do this at this moment. These are the plays in the playbook, right? You teach them when to run what plays. And they come back and they tell you how well it went, and we said, "Well, let's make this adjustment, now run this play."
Right. But you're not just telling them what plays to do, you're helping them understand how it fits into a system that makes sense and could lead to better outcomes.
Right. And the reason why all that works, the reason why the family member's willing to listen to us is because I can articulate their situation better than they can articulate it. And when I say all those things, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's exactly it, Amber. It's like you were in my life. Like, how did you know that?" It's because now they have felt heard and understood, and now they're willing to listen. What I say, if I just went into that mom or that wife and I said, "Listen, you're being too mean and you need to be nicer, and here's what I want you to do," that would not have worked.
Right.
You have to get yourself in a trusted position with that person,
Well,
right?
you have to help them understand that what they're trying to accomplish is something that you understand that has value, and you understand why they're doing what they're doing and trying to accomplish it. And you can also see it's not working.
Yeah, and how they're being treated in the process and how other people can't hear them and how they're being manipulated and gaslighted. They're like, "Yes, that's it." And now your opinion matters.
And you're literally aligning with them the way you would align with the person with the addiction process.
Exactly.
Right.
That is the core pieces to the invisible intervention. It's sort of the foundation underneath.
Who are your favorite people to have show up in your various websites or intake portals? What kind of person do you just really like, or families do you really like to?
Any of the families that are stuck in that situation that we just described, those are our people. We particularly like to help people who have addicted loved ones who haven't lost everything yet. Because sometimes when you get that far out and you're dealing with someone who's homeless or someone who's been in prison 10 times, that other more direct approach might be the better approach because we're at life and death now and we just have to do what we gotta do. And our goal is to get people before they hit bottom, before they've lost everything and burned every bridge. And there are ways to do that. You don't have to step back and let someone ruin everything.
Is it a matter of at the earliest warning sign, or after you've crossed this level, then you're a good candidate for the put your shovel down approach? How do you talk about that? Just at the earliest warning sign of addiction problem, we can help you? Or, if you've had this happen and this happen, but you're not here yet, this is a good sweet spot for us.
If you come to us when you're seeing those early warning signs of addiction, we can tell you how to play the cards in the right way so that this person, you don't have to go through as many years as other people are going to go through. If it's the first warning signs, there's probably not enough uncomfortableness in that person's life that they're going to change. But we can prevent all those years of you being the villain, right? We can sidestep, we can expedite the process. Like you can't make someone not go through the bargaining phases, but you can speed it up. So as long as there is addictive behavior there and that it is addiction, then this system will work. It won't necessarily, like if this is, I caught my kid smoking weed for the first time, and maybe it's not even addiction, and maybe we're jumping the gun, then I don't know that we're probably not the right place. So it has to be clearly there's a problem, but it's not so an addictive process is in play, but not so bad that it's all the way that far gone, right? To where, it's like literally life and death every day. It's when we're in that middle ground, I feel like that we help people the best. And that I love that because I feel like those are the people who aren't being helped.
Excellent. So how do you prefer people reach out to you?
I prefer that people find us on YouTube and consume a little bit of that content first, because what's interesting is people that get to us that way, they're already halfway down the road. And then when they need our services, then they actually already got almost all the puzzle pieces. They may just need us to help them tweak their plays that they're running just a little bit. And so it's so much faster. You can come to us straight out the gate and we can walk you through 1, 2, 3, all the way to the end. But you can get a lot of it just from YouTube and it's free,
To find you on YouTube, they would just search for your name or Amber Hollingsworth, or they would search for Put the Shovel Down?
Either one. It's going to come up. The channel name is Put the Shovel Down. And I know that seems like a weird name, but it's an old recovery saying. Means you hit your bottom when you put your shovel down. You don't have to keep digging. You don't have to burn every bridge. You can just be like, okay, yeah, I'm done. I can see this isn't going where I want it to. Put the shovel down. As the family member, put your shovel down. As the addicted person, put your shovel down. There's so much content on the channel for every angle of that. So whichever role you're playing in that system, there's content on that channel to help you with wherever you are in that process.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking time to share with us. And I'm literally thinking of several people in my caseload that will benefit from what I've already gotten from listening to the channel. And I look forward to following the channel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And thank you for all the good work you're doing as well.
Well, you're entirely welcome and deserving. Take care.
Amber Hollingsworth is a master addiction counselor, founder of Hope for Families Recovery Center, and creator of the YouTube channel Put the Shovel Down. With over 2 decades of experience, she's helped thousands of families navigate addiction recovery using innovative, relationship-focused strategies like the invisible intervention. Known for her relatable, no-nonsense approach, Amber empowers families to outsmart addiction, set healthy boundaries, and rebuild trust. Her expertise and compassionate style make her a sought-after podcast guest, offering practical advice and hope to families facing the challenges of addiction.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, we invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.